Good evening. Welcome to day 101 of my public creative journal. Now, every day I document what I'm learning as I build my voice, my music, and my creative life, with the ultimate goal of this journey being to perform in an a cappella group. So today I'm going to fill you in on what the world I belong in has to do with learning music. So I always talk about the color of the day, and today was a white day. And yes, I'm one of those people who says white, just like Cool Whip. Yeah, it's how I was brought up. White days are my planning days. They're the days where I step back from the day-to-day rehearsals and ask a much broader question. Is the journey itself still moving in the right direction? Most of today was spent doing exactly that, building next week's calendar without overhauling it, reviewing changes that have happened over the past couple of weeks, making one important decision. For a little while, at least, I'm going to move from 2 musical sessions every day down to 1. And that's not because I'm stepping away from the journey. Actually, it's because I want to protect it. Over the last several weeks, I've discovered something. Working all day on music, then spending every evening producing the journal entries is simply becoming too much. I'd rather make the small adjustment now than discover 6 months from now that I'm slowly burning myself out, or may have already burnt myself out. My son actually asked me today, now that you've passed 100, are you gonna make it to a year? And I explained, like I said last night, on the first day, I didn't even know if I was gonna make it to day 2 or 3. I'm just taking every day on its own, but at the same time, I am looking forward. And sometimes the best way to keep moving forward is to deliberately slow down a little. But that really is not what stayed with me today. Yesterday, quite by accident, well, actually through a series of connected YouTube videos, I stumbled onto a channel and a show called Broadway Jeopardy. Now, if you've watched the journal for any length of time, you already know I have absolutely loved musical theater. When I was in college, my major was theater, and I had 2 areas of emphasis in my theatrical studies. One was directing, the other one, musical theater. So naturally, all right, I love musical theater, I'm gonna watch. And it was actually kind of fun. I did discover very quickly that my Broadway knowledge is getting fuzzier once the questions climb into those higher difficulty. I'm also discovering that my Broadway knowledge has faded a little since the 90s, so I'm working on that. Apparently I've been away from Broadway just long enough to become a little dangerous. So one category kept appearing in the game. There was lots of categories. One of them was called Broadway Maven. And after each clue, the host would spend a minute talking about the group. And it simply wasn't a streaming service. It was a community, a place where people spend hours in sort of classes exploring Broadway shows in depth. Not simply watching them, but asking questions. Symbolism, character choices, influences. It's the kind of conversations that I absolutely ate up during college. So, almost as an aside, he mentioned that an upcoming class, actually today's, was going to be about Schmigadoon. Now, for those of you not familiar with Schmigadoon, it was a series on Apple TV Plus for about 2 seasons. And it was, if anything, a love letter to musicals of the 50s, and maybe a little bit of the 40s and 60s. But really, those absolutely clean sets, painted backgrounds, clothing that looks like it's possibly out of the 30s, maybe the 1890s, I can't tell. And everybody's just happy. And the show is about two contemporary doctors who are involved, but their relationship is slowly decaying. So they go on a relationship recovery retreat. And while they're lost in the forest, away from the main group, in the rain, they suddenly cross over a bridge and the weather's beautiful. The rain is just gone. Everything's beautiful. And there's a sign for Schmigadoon. And they work their way down the hill, and they basically enter the city into the town square. And immediately, everybody who's out goes into the production number about Schmigadoon, telling you about the town. You know, it's right out of Oklahoma and maybe 30 or 40 other ones. So that's now gone to Broadway. It only made it 2 seasons on Apple TV Plus, but the Broadway version, I think, just won the Tony for Best Musical, and the actor playing the male doctor on Broadway was Alex Brightman, who, you follow this, Has Been Hotels, Sir Pentious and Adam, Hell of a Boss's Fizzaroli, so it's almost a very straight-laced character for him. He's the first Beetlejuice, if I remember correctly, and I may not, but we try. So they're going to do a deep dive into Schmigadoon. Yeah, well, I pretty much had no decision. Anyone who hasn't seen it, it is a fantastic series. Everything is a production number, and it doesn't help in Schmigadoon that one of them loves musicals and the other one absolutely does not love musicals, and numbers keep popping up around them. It just gets weirder after the first song. I love it. So, between Broadway, animation, musical theater, comedy, already this is speaking my language, and I had to find out more. So, I looked into Broadway Maven, and knowing how much Broadway tickets are, I was terrified at what membership was going to cost. And then I saw it was $25 a month for 5 to 15 classes, which were discussions, and there are some names of theater that are lecturers, speakers, staff. It's really amazing. So I joined, and the person teaching the class, I think, was the host for Broadway Jeopardy. And for an hour, we just talked about the influences behind the series. He compared scenes from the show with the classic Broadway musicals that inspired them, to the point where he would actually run a bit of the original, run a bit of Schmigadoon. You could see and hear how it was just an absolute love letter. And of course, the other thing that really got me, because I love this kind of conversation, was he talked about the differences between parody, spoof, and homage, which I have to laugh, because the first thought I had was, yeah, but what about pastiche? And pastiche is basically where you aren't copying someone's work, you're copying their voice. The best example I can come up with pastiche is Weird Al, who will often do songs that he does parody or satire songs. But there are things like a song called Dare to Be Stupid, which is in the style of Devo. So much so that the lead singer of Devo at the time resented Weird Al for finding the sound he'd always been looking for. So I thought pastiche, and during one of the breaks, somebody else brought the question up, and the person teaching was, oh, we'll get to that, just hang on. And it really was probably one of the most enjoyable hours I've spent with musical theater in years. Like, the last time I came away with this buzz was after seeing the Book of Mormon on Broadway with my partner. It was so much fun and so electric. Okay, there was also my first show on the West End in London, but that wasn't a musical, but that was just like bucket list. Anyway, those kinds of experiences stay with you. And this class today absolutely joined the list. So I started thinking about everything that was going on this weekend. Yesterday, I watched a local a cappella group perform. And after finishing the journal last night, I found myself watching and singing along to Voice Play again. And somewhere today, I ended up watching the finale from Pitch Perfect. The secret, if you go watch the finale from Pitch Perfect 2 again, the Canadian competition team in the finale is Pentatonics, meaning that the performers, the group Pentatonics, play the Canadian finalists. It's very amusing. Actually, several a cappella groups from the time were in that scene. I digress. Today, Broadway, musical analysis. People who care deeply about the art form, people who pour so much into it. And I realized that none of those things felt like distractions from my journey. They felt like the journey itself. I mean, I've often thought for a very long time that this was the world where I felt the most comfortable, the world where I belonged. And it's not because I can already do everything. Obviously, I can't. I mean, hell, I can't have a big head of hair anymore and do the show hair. That would be really yummy. But I'm still learning to sing, and I'm learning theory, and I'm finding music to arrange, and I'm still trying to become the musician that I really want to be. But sitting there this afternoon, surrounded by people happily spending an hour discussing why one musical references another, I realize those are my people. They are exactly the kind of conversations that have always made me, I'd say happy, but I mean, it's closer to a euphoria. I get a buzz off of it. And as an ambivert, you can sort that one out for yourselves. But oddly enough, that realization made this morning's planning session make a lot more sense. Yeah, the calendar changes. There's now a reduced rehearsal schedule. I am going to accomplish things more slowly than I had originally hoped. Granted, I hoped I would record into the microphone the first day and sound like Jeremy Jordan and your bass voice, but that's not going to happen. So none of it is me stepping away from music. It's me making sure I can stay in this world for as long as I can. Because that's really the goal of the journey. Not to survive week to week, not to hit 100 days or even a year. They're nice. They're mile markers along the way, but to build something sustainable enough that one day I'm contributing back to the community that I have gained so much from. Maybe that's why the journal is public. It's the start of that process that really I need to give back everything that I have gotten from my love of all of this. Okay, it brings me back to this title. For a long time, I felt like I was trying to find my way into the world. And this weekend, between a cappella and Broadway, music, and simply rediscovering why I love all of this, I caught myself thinking very differently. Maybe I'm not trying to find my way into it after all. Maybe it has been the world I belong in. Some of my fondest memories have been being in shows and directing. I could ramble on for hours on experiences of both of those things. And who knows, maybe I will. But for now, thank you for spending part of your day with me as I roll past the mile marker to the next stage in the future. I will see you tomorrow. It will be, today's 101, so tomorrow will be 102. That is still just very surprising to me. Thank you again. Later.